The following podcast is brought to you by PeacemakerNetwork.com. PeacemakerNetwork.com. Audio is provided by Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com.
The assassination of Charlie Kirk remains a topic of widespread discussion. This week, we continue our investigation with Part 2, focusing on the various theories that have emerged since his death. All of this and more on this episode of Charlie Crime Buster. It is what some people are calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. The Charlie Crime Buster name and all forms and abbreviations are property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent unless or until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains adult subject matter. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Charlie Crime Buster. We're going to talk about those theories that are floating out there about how Charlie Kirk was actually shot and killed. And we're going to get a little more into detail on those in this episode today. First, let me thank you for joining with us. If you're a first-time listener or a seasoned listener, we always invite you to reach out with shout-out. Reach me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the program, then please go on over to peacemakernetwork.com. There we talk about how we support together the brave men and women of military and law enforcement and those special first responders who come running when we need them desperately. It's a way you can support them and support the program, peacemakernetwork.com. Hey, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That gets our word out there to more people every time you do that. We're most appreciative of that. If you were to have questions about the program, we do invite your comments and questions, or even if you have suggestions about other episodes you'd like us to do, or you'd like to lodge an objection and disagree. It is, as we say, a safe spot. Reach me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. All right, since the tragic event, well, there have been numerous theories about other potential shooters even. In this section of our podcast today, we're going to take a moment to dive a little deeper into these theories. We're going to analyze some of the details, and we're going to consider some of the implications that each one of those theories may hold. Let's just start out and tell you a rundown of what did not happen, despite claims to the contrary. There are some of these claims that are so outrageous that I probably shouldn't even take the time to go through them, but just to let you know how much is out there and how outrageous some of them are, not all of them, but some of them, I want to mention some of these earlier ones real quickly, kick it aside, and then we're going to dive in on some of the more serious ones. First of all, let me say there's no evidence that the shooter might have been a Kirk supporter. In fact, about an hour after the shooting itself, even before Kirk's death was announced, political commentator Matthew Dowd, he suggested on an MSNBC broadcast, he said, the shooter, it may have been a Kirk supporter. This is the way he said that, quote, unquote. We don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration or... So we have no idea about this, Dowd said. Well, I don't even know why he said those words because they're so outrageous to think that he was shot by one of his own supporters accidentally celebrating by shooting gunfire in the air. I think is a little bit out there, don't you? And while at that time the shooter was remaining at large, there was just no evidence at all of any kind, any sort, that supported that the shooter was a Kirk supporter or someone celebrating. Now, we do know that day there were several different things that took place that caused a lot of commotion. Another one was the fact that George Zinn was taken into custody, but he was not the shooter. In fact, if you remember looking on the news during that day, if you did, videos of a bald man was being put on the television and on the line that he was being dragged away by law enforcement, and that really did circulate all widely on X and other online platforms. People sharing those videos said the man's name was George Zinn, and there was a man by the name of George Zinn who was initially taken into custody. but he was released. They did charge him, though, obstruction by police. And the Salt Lake Tribune reported that Zinn disrupted events in the past. He had a kind of a habit of doing this. He even has a criminal record dating back to the 1980s. The district attorney there, Sim Gill, well, he mentioned to a newspaper that Zinn was often arrested on suspicion of trespassing. Did say that he was politically conservative. He leaned libertarian. But he was not the shooter. Another theory was a guy by the name of Michael Mollison, a 77-year-old Canadian man. And he was not the shooter. This was an image of a different man, bald, that went viral. In fact, the next post with more than 992,000 views said that the assassination attempt on Charlie Kirk was allegedly carried out by a guy by the name of Michael Mollison. He was a member of the Utah Democratic Party. That's what Fox News reported. That claim, too, was unfounded. In fact, Mollison is a 77-year-old retired banker who lived and was in in Canada during that time. Now, that rumor, according to authorities, originated from an X account, now get this, that was impersonating a Fox broadcast affiliate. And that comes right straight from the New York Times. So you see, my friend, there are a lot of these things. You got to be careful what you're reading online. You got to be careful what you take in as facts that are not facts. In fact, the fact-checking website, Lead Stories, found that image of Mollison was posted way back in 2020 on an account with his name. So here's another one, by the way, far out there. That is a guy by the name of Sam Hyde. He was a 40-year-old comedian. It was just a recycled deal, you know. That one has been recycled for almost a decade to push disinformation about the identity of a mass shooting. That's in mass shooting suspects in the United States and even abroad. It is a real-life comedian whose name and photos have repeatedly been used by internet hoaxers. And again, after Kirk's death, that same one was circulated on social media. In fact, the September the 10th X post showed a man with a rifle as an image. And it was the same one that goes back to this one that's just old and outdated. Now, the video image showed Samuel Hyde, who's now 40 years of age, a comedian, showed him with a rifle, and it's all the way back from a 2016 YouTube video that has since been removed. Here's another one. There was another video of a shooter escaping. Yep, escaping the area there. But that one was way back, if you look at the original place of it, was way back in July, and it was in Nevada. And yet it was posted out there saying, Charlie Kirk's real shooter escaping after the shooting. That post, hold on to your hat, that post, which was so out there, which was so fake, that was all the way back from July in Nevada, that one gained 9.5 million views. But then a reverse image of that search showed the video was taken from a different incident that happened in July and even in a different state, Nevada. What is really interesting about this is KRNV News 4 posted the video July the 29th on Facebook. Now, these stories, my friend, our theories are easily debunked. But there are some far more serious ones that are not easily debunked. A lot of them have been implied by Candace Owens, a top influencer, who's done a lot of good stuff on her podcast. This is why her reporting as of recent has me concerned and confused. And that is why we need to take a serious look at her claims and some other claims that are appearing online regarding to the shooting of Charlie Kirk. And we're going to get into those in a moment. But right now, it's time for us to pause, take a quick break, be right back with you on this important topic. But now we're going to take a time to pause, smile, relax, and it's time for Charlie Crowdbuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Our Crazy Crook story today, well, the Crazy Crook struck at a Midway International Airport. And this crook allegedly was breaking into a private aviation hangar, stole a shuttle bus, and drove it onto a taxiway. Now, my friend, every possible port of entry at Midway and O'Hare International Airport is supposed to be guarded by security. Doors to the runway, other secure areas are equipped with keypads requiring even special badges to pass through. But somehow, a crazy woman got into a secured area at Midway and roamed freely. That's where planes are parked. That was before she hopped on the bus and drove it around. After driving in a circle, she returned to the hangar building where the witness lost sight of her. Another witness had claimed that she seen the woman holding the hangar door open for her as the witness was pushing a food cart. A third witness came forward and said the woman had asked about using the restroom in the signature hangar. Well, it didn't take responding officers long to spot this crazy crook. She was found on the unsecured side of the hangar, and when officers questioned her about it, about how she got in, got that bus, drove it all around, why she did it, she said, quote unquote, "I was just testing security." And then she added, "Free Palestine." Well, it did remain unclear how or exactly where she was able to get inside the secured area. A statement from Signature said they were working closely with authorities investigating that security breach. Hopefully they do. The woman did not appear to have a prior criminal record. She listed her profession as a licensed social worker. Her home address was listed, well, less than a block away from the airport. Maybe she was sleepwalking, huh? But at her first court appearance on Tuesday, she was allowed to go free ahead of trial. Some serious charges, by the way. But she is required to regularly check in with a probation officer. And my friend, this crazy crook who somehow thought she could get away, was still in an airport shuttle bus at a guarded airport, is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Now back to our main focus. As I said, there's a lot of these theories out there that you can just really quickly just wipe them away. They're nonsense. There's nothing to it. But there are some other theories that are more serious, and some other theories that have some very prominent people that are supporting some of those theories. And so it behooves us, that's a crazy word, behoove, isn't it? But it behooves us to somehow take a look at these theories. So let's talk about them as we focus in on the theories of Charlie's shooting. First of all, there is what we call the small gun at close range theory. Now, Candace Owens, among others, are suggesting that the fatal wound that Charlie had suggests that it was a small firearm at close range, which would mean, of course, inside the audience and that inner layer of security that I talked to you about, rather than from a mile away from a rooftop. Now, this argument is based not just on what Candace Owens said, but on the nature of the wound, because there was no exit wound, along with the fact that no one behind Charlie was hit. So there is some credibility to the idea of why was there not an exit wound, and why weren't other people hit? And to really get the answer, we have to go to the very surgeon who tried to save Charlie. This surgeon described, well, I love this. He said it was an absolute miracle. Absolute miracle. That's what the surgeon said, that the bullet which hit Charlie's neck did not pass through him and strike any of the other dozens of people that were standing behind him there on September the 10th. This is all according to a Turning Point spokesman. And this spokesman said, "I'm usually not interested in getting involved into this kind of online chatter." And he said it is somewhat graphic, but in this case, the fact that there wasn't an exit wound is probably what he called a miracle, and he wanted people to know about it. At least that's what Andrew Colvelt said, who is a representative, on Saturday. Now, this is what the doctor told him. It was an absolute miracle that someone else didn't get killed. And then this is from the doctor himself. His bone, according to the doctor, was so healthy, and the density, talking about Charlie's bone, was so impressive that he was like the man of steel. It should have gone through and through And if it had, it would have likely killed those standing behind him too. But in the end, the coroner did find that bullet. That bullet was found there. It didn't vanish away, and it was just beneath the skin. Just beneath the skin. That bullet stayed inside the body of Charlie Kirk. And so this idea that he wasn't shot by a bullet from a rifle far away is just not true. There is no evidence at all that any of this other thing happened. We even have the text from Tyler, the alleged shooter, sent to his roommate that he had left his rifle in the woods and he wanted to go back and retrieve it since it was the weapon that had been the one that his grandfather owned. This was why Tyler's dad, remember his dad, who already thought the person on the video could have been his son, he asked his own son to show him the rifle. To show a picture of the rifle, which he could not. Why? Because he left it behind just like he said, and the police found it. Area of the shooting, and guess what? It was with that rifle. Guess what? It was Tyler's DNA. His DNA has been attached to the rifle. And my friend, there is zero evidence that Charlie Kirk was killed by small arms ammo. Zero evidence that he was shot from that inner crowd. The evidence, on the contrary, all points to the alleged shooter, Tyler, who climbed up on a roof and shot Charlie, jumped down, made his getaway, leaving the weapon behind. So this idea that he was shot from the inner crowd, no evidence whatsoever. Next, if you've been following the shooting from the very beginning, you probably saw videos of a man standing right close to and behind Charlie Kirk before he was shot there. And this image, by the way, has gone viral as people have been convinced that he was giving mysterious hand signals. You know, in other words, that he was giving hand signals to other shooters that were in the crowd that were going to take out Charlie. And a lot of this goes back to the fact that some of this believes that there was a great big group of people that was behind his assassination and that this guy was giving hand signals. Now, in the clips, you can see a man wearing a white t-shirt, sunglasses, and a hat. He puts his hand on the cap, tips it down. And a lot of people have been sharing theories, well, this is a military signal. Oh, my friend. But the man in question is actually a Christian apologist. He's an author. He's a public speaker. He's a radio host, Frank Turk. He is one of Charlie Kirk's friends who was there as part of the team. And he shut down all allegations that he was involved in the shooting. He shot them all down. His team even shared a statement on X on his behalf saying the viral accusations against the doctor are categorically false. He was there at the Utah University that day as part of Charlie Kirk's team, standing with him as a close friend and mentor. Their bond was marked by a lot of respect, unwavering support. And just like everybody else, he wanted to see the assassin brought to justice. These accusations against this doctor, this author, this strong Christian speaker is categorically false. He was at the University of Utah Valley University, yes, but he was standing by him as a friend and mentor. How many of us have touched our own cap from time to time? And I think that taking this to another place has no actual evidence at all that anything else was involved. In fact, he even provided assistance to Charlie during the incident. Now, he has not spoke out a whole lot about that because, frankly, it was just ridiculous. They had appeared in public together many times, and they had been on each other's podcasts and all of that. So this idea that this guy was there in the crowd giving hand signals for a shooter, it just does not compute. Now, there's another theory that's a little more serious, and I think it's one that Candace Owens has made a whole lot of, and that is the Iseral connection to the shooting. And while it is true, and I will give Candace this in what she's saying. It is true that Charlie Kirk may not have supported everything that Israel was doing. But it is also equally clear that he has, and he had, great respect for Israel from a biblical sense. Anybody that knows Charlie's Christianity will know that he was very close to the Bible, and the Bible says that Israel is our friend. And not only did Charlie have respect for Israel, even though he may not agree with everything that Israel does, no more than you and I ever agree with anything our government does, regardless of who's in political power. He did not agree with everything that Israel did. The idea, though, that he had done his move from where he supported Israel to where he was that day would lead to him being assassinated by Israel, my friend, that's a long way to go. He not only had respect for Israel, he had a strong distaste for Hamas and all the things they do. This theory also, unfortunately now, receives some traction from Russia and other enemies of Israel. In fact, now over 10,000 social media posts claims that Israel orchestrated Kirk's killing, which has fueled a major political charged conspiracy, and one that Candace is implying very strongly. Now, the official state media now listen to this, think about these countries. The official state media from Russia, China, and Iran have all amplified these conspiracy narratives. AI has generated tons of images that they have used to spread disinformation online. Now think about that. Russia, China, Iran, all trying to stir up these controversies to weaken America's resolve, to cause confusion, to keep us away from the real truth. The real truth? The FBI and Utah authorities have identified the suspect Tyler Robinson, age 22. DNA evidence links him to the crime scene, both the rifle and the screwdriver. He sent texts, admitted that he did it to his friend. He left a note that indicated intent. His parents recognized his image on the video. They contacted him. They had him turn himself in as the shooter. And all these conspiracy claims linking Israel to this, well, it's been rejected by the Israeli officials, including the Prime Minister. He called the allegations insane, false, and outrageous as they were. The former Mossad director also publicly stated Israel was not involved in the killing, said absolutely not. We had nothing to do with it. And here's something else. There are fact-checking organizations, and some of them are very good ones, and they have flagged most of the visual claims and misinterpretations and manipulations and false claims. These claims have been flagged by fact-checking organizations. Then think with me, friend. Why would Israel, who has the greatest support from the United States, actually set up an assassination on U.S. soil, period, much less of a person who has been a strong supporter of Israel? It does not make sense. There is not only zero evidence of this, but it is outrageous, even from the place of common sense. Now I get it. We all like to question the government. We like to complain about government errors. But this investigation has some of the greatest respected law enforcement investigators involved in bringing this person to justice. These are men and women who have no political agenda, who are simply doing what we as investigators do all the time, follow the evidence. Not follow theories, but follow the evidence. And that evidence is telling us that the alleged Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old young man who was in a relationship with a trans, who told his own parents he killed Charlie because he thought that Charlie spreaded hate. He, Tyler Robinson, shot and killed Charlie Kirk. Real evidence backs this up, unlike the theories that we have mentioned on today's program. Now, Candace Owen and others have their right to speak their mind. They have their right to disagree with law enforcement. They have their right to even use their influence on others. They have that right. I would just hope that they would think about what they're posting, what they're saying, and how that's impacting the memory of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is a man that was admired by millions of people. His story for many means a great deal to them. He was a strong advocate of open debate. He would invite those that disagreed with him to come and debate him. He would do that respectfully. He encouraged people who had another opinion to speak out. This is the kind of thing we should be focused on as law enforcement does their job to get the killer. I am concerned that all of this noise about conspiracies is just a way of taking the focus off of the memory and the impact of Charlie Kirk. And it is happening. Instead of talking about, hey, those things that Charlie Kirk believed in, instead of talking about, hey, let's respect his memory by all of us on both sides of the political spectrum. Let's sit down and talk and air about our opinions. Let's talk to each other about them. Because Charlie Kirk himself was said, when we stop talking, that's when violence comes. Why not we step back, take a breath, let the authorities do their job, and just honor his memory? But again, Candace Owens has the right to do what she's doing, and so does so many others, who many of them are getting on board of the conspiracy theories. And that shouldn't be surprising. Any assassination has all had these people who get involved in conspiracies. Sometimes thoughts that are conspiracy turns into real facts. But so far, nothing of what has been said about how Charlie Kirk was killed takes us away from the real evidence that's pointing to the real killer. And for true crime fighters, or crime busters, as we call them on this program, we always want to make sure that we're following the real evidence and never try to solve a crime with theories that have not been proven and cannot be proven in a court of law. I believe that if this case gets to court, if there's not some deal that's made between the alleged shooter and authorities, I believe that if it goes to court, the evidence will show without a doubt, without a reasonable doubt, it will show that the shooter was indeed this young man, Tyler, who shot Charlie from a rooftop, ended his life simply because he did not agree with what Charlie said about transgender. Well, there you have it. Some more of the theories, a close look at those theories, and a look at the real evidence. Until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert, for the life you save may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional information and podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. All music and sound effects are courtesy of Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag @CharlieCrimebuster, and then click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way for you to listen to our podcasts, or for you to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crimebuster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you. So please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us again for another exciting crime episode with Charlie Crimebuster.